Welcome to my next taping. I want to talk today about my second near death experience and what are called the after effects of that experience. And there's been a lot of them. And I have gained a very unusual connection to the afterlife as a result. So, the second near death experience occurred as a result of the fact that I was prescribed a drug that I took too much of, a sedative called clonazepam. And instead of taking one or two a day, I was taking like 6 or 8 because of a stressful situation I was in. And I ran out of it. Of course, you use too much, that's what's going to happen. It was near Christmas. I couldn't get my prescription refilled because the pharmacy was closed for like 2 weeks. So I cold turkey withdrawed off of it. I couldn't catch a breath for a couple of days. I sat just bent over, not being able to draw a full breath. And I went upstairs to lay down. I was laying on my right side. I went to turn onto my left side, but I didn't make it that far. I got to my back, and all of a sudden I started to leave my body. And I found myself floating out of my body up through a tunnel. And I looked on the left side, and I could see my guides sitting in a church praying for me. Then I floated higher, and I saw Mother Teresa, and she said, "I'm praying for you." Then I floated higher and higher, and I saw Edgar Casey, and he just was sitting there smiling at me. I said, "What are you doing?" And he said, "I'm talking to you." And if anybody knows of him, a lot of people do, he was a famous psychic called the Sleeping Prophet from Hopkinsville, Tennessee, a poor man that did over 15,000 medical readings while he was in a deep sleep. And the doctors could never prove him wrong, although they tried. Well, then I floated higher, and I saw St. Peter, and he was standing at a podium, and he said, "We're going to put things back the way they were." And then I floated higher, and I stood in front of what I only know was being the throne of God. And at that point, I was asked if I wanted to stay or leave. They said, "You have been chosen to sit at the right hand of God." I knew if I said yes, that I would be staying. So I said, "No, that's Jesus' place." And right after that, immediately I felt myself falling and falling, and I started being afraid because I didn't know how hard or what I was going to hit. And all of a sudden, thump, I landed in my bed. Well, then after that, for the next several hours, I kept leaving my body, and I am flying all over the world. I saw many places in the world. I forgot most of them except for Egypt. When I landed in Egypt, I went inside one of the pyramids, and I found myself traveling between two walls, an outer wall and an inner wall of the pyramid. And it felt very tight and confined, so I said, "I want to get out of here." And when I said that, immediately I was in the main part of the pyramid. And at that point, when I looked around, I saw Cleopatra. I saw her as clearly as if she was alive, standing in front of me. And she gave me some messages. And then I went, and I was back home again. So that was sad experience. And after that, I began to have what in near-death experience research is called after effects. And my first after effect that occurred for me was one day I was feeling pretty down, and I was actually in my bathroom sitting on the toilet, and I thought, well, maybe if I say a prayer, I'll feel better. So I started trying to pray, and out came what at first I thought was babbling, incoherent. And I said, "Oh, concentrate, just shut, pray, pray." So I tried again, and out came these strange words. So I made a recording of myself speaking. Well, it started to sound like another language. So I took it to a counselor I was seeing at the time, and she said, I think it sounds like Hebrew. I'm going to take it to a professor friend I have at the University of Toronto. So that's what she did. And next week when I came back to see my counselor, she said, well, the professor said it is Hebrew, and it's ancient Hebrew, and you should take it to the Ancient Studies Department at U of T. Well, I never followed up on that. And things seemed to go downhill. And as a result of recovering from cancer and not being well enough to work, I ended up having to live in a homeless shelter for a year and a half. I don't think that wasn't rough. So after I got things settled back out of my own apartment and everything, I began to notice more and more after effects. One is my ability to pretty much read anything. I can read palms, I can read cards, playing cards, tarot cards. I can sit and read a bowl of water and connect with somebody by staring into a bowl of water. And I can physically touch someone, hold the hand of someone that has passed away in spirit. If I connect with a pet, I can physically feel myself petting that cat or dog, and I can tell you exactly the color, everything. The other thing I noticed, which I felt was really phenomenal, is I do palm readings. Well, that's not so unusual, but it is how I do it, because when I take my finger, just my index finger, and I kind of like draw on the person's palm, what happens, my mind just kind of goes off, and I'll see little mini home videos of that person's life. And they're just maybe 2 to 4 seconds long, which is enough for me to see what's going on. And I can also connect that way to people that have passed away. They're connected to that person. And the little home videos are a rare glimpse into that person's life. So that's unusual. But then I go a step beyond that, which is I can, using only the person's name, I can imagine that I'm holding on to their hand and mentally touch it with my finger and get information. And I'm talking detailed information. I did this with someone that had connections to another country, and I gave specific names of cities, locations, jobs of families, and that sort of thing. And in my mind, I think, like, wow, wouldn't that be a great thing to use for criminology or whatever, that you could take, knowing only the name of a suspected person, and just mentally hold their hand and touch it. The first time that I did this that was linked to criminology was a spirit of a little girl appeared to me beside my bed, and she said, I'm Tabitha. And she said I was kidnapped on the way home from school, or on the way to catching my bus. And 12 years ago, so I Googled it and I actually found her. And that's what happened. That was in Tennessee. So one night I sat watching TV, and all of a sudden I felt her around, and I could see her hand, and I mentally touched it, and immediately, boom, I got the name of the person that actually kidnapped her. Unfortunately, when I contacted law enforcement, they wouldn't take my information because they said it had been over 10 or 12 years, so they wouldn't accept what I said. But I was able to track and find out the person. The name of the person I got was a convicted pedophile. So there you go. So the after effects of what I experienced continue. And years later, one day, for some reason, I decided I think I'm going to try and speak Hebrew again. I'm going to just give it a try. So I got on my phone to Google Translate, and I set it to translate Hebrew. And I said a prayer, and I said, I want to speak Hebrew. So I closed my eyes and took a deep breath and started to speak. And then I opened my eyes and looked down at the phone, and sure enough, it said I had spoken Hebrew and what the translation was for what I said. Well, I had connected to a man by the name of Stephen Schwartz, who's a paranormal researcher and scientist from the U.S., and we worked on different remote viewing things together. And what he did with the recording I made, he showed it to a rabbi. He played it for a rabbi, and he said it's an old-fashioned form of Hebrew. So, and then after that, I sent another recording to a professor from the States, and he said that Hebrew was a modern Hebrew. So I have spoken 3 different types of Hebrew that I have never studied at all. And as well as that, I have been able to successfully speak 84 different languages that I, of course, never learned. But when I speak Hebrew, that's where I get the most information. I have vast knowledge of Israel, past and present, dating back centuries, names of towns and cities that aren't even towns, kibbutzes, names of stores, restaurants, the phone exchange in Israel, the number of a bus line, and as well as, and also ancient Jewish religion dating back to the Torah and before. And as well as that, when I speak Hebrew, I have knowledge of advanced computer programming, where me normally, I'm lucky I can get online and Google stuff. That's the extent, save files. I have also a knowledge of advanced physics, human genealogy, etc., and much more. So this is an aspect that is what is called channeling. And that's a rare gift. And to be able to speak all these languages is very rare. When I experience something, I try and go online and find out, is anybody else with this ability or close to it ever had these experiences? And I can find no evidence that nobody is able to do that, channel 84 different languages. And like I said, the knowledge of Israel that I have is way beyond me and the subjects. So it has helped me tremendously in my readings, tremendously, that connection that I have with being able to connect with non-physical reality. It's almost like I can go back and forth in between 2 worlds. And the other thing I've noticed, mediums, by people that are skeptical, they get accused of doing what is called cold readings, where they just throw random bits of information, and because the person is so grief-stricken, they'll latch on to anything and go, yeah, that was my mother. She was always kind. She was always generous. But no, that's not true, for me at least. I can sit by myself, just with my spirit guide, say a prayer, and if I'm going to do a reading 4 or 5 hours later for my spiritualist group on Sunday night, I say to my guide, is there any spirits around that want to give messages to the person I'm doing the reading for or to the group? And I just sit and listen to what he says, and it's phenomenal what I hear. And he describes and sometimes shows me images and visions of. My most recent example was I sat down not too long ago, 2 weeks ago, and he said, I'm taking you to Toronto. And I said, what? And I saw a flash image of the city of Toronto. And he said, there's someone here that was killed because of her involvement with a satanic cult. I said, what? Yes. So I got to the group, and I said, there's somebody here that died as a result of being involved in a satanic cult. I said, does anybody know someone like that? I said, Diane, I feel like this is for you. I said, do you know anybody like that? She said, yes, I do. A woman was involved in a satanic cult, locked in a house with a biker gang that wouldn't let her leave. She was diabetic. She couldn't get her insulin for 10 days and she died. So that's pretty specific. That's not random generalized information. The week before that, as I sat down, my guide said there's someone here that died as a result of a skateboarding accident. And I asked if anybody knew that. Two people said they knew of somebody, a 12-year-old boy that skateboarded down Hunter Street in Peterborough and was hit by a car. Again, that's very specific. For 6 months, I taught an online spiritual and psychic development group, and I would sit down a few hours before the group and do the same thing. I would ask for messages. And in one 15-minute span, this is what I got. The first thing my guide said, there's 2 women that died as a result of intimate partner relationships. They were murdered. I said, oh no, really? Then the next thing he said, someone's house exploded. And the image I had, I was in the house, I could see the house, the explosion had gutted the house. I could see the walls completely gutted. I said, oh no. And if that wasn't enough, I said, is there anything else? And he said, all of a sudden I saw a car pull up, a window rolled down, and this guy, a real sleazy looking guy, I knew he was trying to get a little girl to go get in his car. Kidnapper. I said, oh no. At that point, I literally put down my pen and walked away disgusted. I'm like, you're kidding me. This can't be. There's only like 4, 5 people at the most coming to my group to see me tonight. Are you telling me, of those 4 or 5 people, there's been 2 murders, a house explosion, and an attempted kidnapping? But sure enough, that is exactly what happened. One woman, her friend's husband shot her. Another woman, her boyfriend killed her. Well, her relative, she said, in her words, he ripped her throat out. The other woman was shot. And then I asked anyway I thought, okay, I might as well go through the whole thing. I said, does anybody know of somebody whose house exploded? That same woman said, yes, my ex-boyfriend's mother's house exploded. I said, oh my goodness, was anybody killed? And she said, no, she was taking her son to the hospital for dialysis at the time. And I thought, oh my goodness, well, I might as well do the rest. And I said, is anybody here aware of a young child where there was an attempted kidnapping? And another woman, a different woman, said, I know. That happened to me when I was in kindergarten. I was on my way home from school, and a man tried to pick me up and get me into his car. And I took off, ran and hid under the bushes, and he walked around pretending to be my father and looked for me. Now, those cases stem back to 30 years or more. Now, how would I know that? Sitting by myself with only my spirit guide, somebody also deceased, right? So I have known many miracles as a result of this second near-death experience that have been phenomenal. And now my contact with the afterlife has been like 100% stronger. So if you want to talk to your deceased family, I'm the one. It is truly amazing. And I continue to do what I do. I love what I do. And I'm now connected with an organization called IANS, which stands for International Association for Near-Death Studies. And it's nice to be connected to people that do understand that close encounters with death can literally change your life and have life-transforming results. And people that have lost loved ones, say to murder and suicide, those experiences are life-transforming. and they have a profound impact on that person and their family. So I